Thank you, His Excellency, for giving time for this interview. First of all, can you tell us about the visit of your Canadian Foreign Minister Stephen Dion to Myanmar
just finished a couple of hours ago. Yeah. In fact, yes, we dropped him off at the airport this morning, and I've only been back at the office for a couple of hours. It was a really action-packed visit. He was here less than 48 hours, but he had about 15 meetings in Yangon and in Naypyidaw, so it was non-stop. I felt very sorry for him because it's a long flight from Canada, about more than 24 hours, and they got off the plane and they had to go right into meetings. But the most, maybe the best known ones were meeting with Aung San Suu Kyi, Minister of Foreign Affairs. So they had Minister of Foreign Affairs to Minister of Foreign Affairs talk, and he also had a meeting with the President. There were also in Naypyidaw a number of meetings with parliamentarians, because now that the new parliament is sitting, it's a great opportunity for us to start building ties between Canadian parliamentarians and Myanmar parliamentarians. So he had meetings with the two international relations committees, upper and lower house, and there were some discussions about maybe trying to start, there used to be a Parliamentary Friends of Burma group, and maybe we can start a Parliamentary Friends of Myanmar group to link those two parliaments together. That was just part of what we did in Naypyidaw. And then in Yangon, he had a very interesting program, because part of it was briefings with experts of academics, local, foreign, but then he also had a very long meeting here at the embassy with some human rights defenders, representatives of local grassroots human rights organizations. We can talk about that in more detail. And then we wanted him to see a little bit, to not just be inside boardrooms all day and sitting in armchairs talking. So he did a visit to the Secretariat, and then a long walk through historical Yangon. So we didn't just want to photo up in the Secretariat, we wanted him to really see some of the old city, see some of the life in the old city. And of course, visit to Shwedagon, which is always sort of mind-blowing for foreigners the first time they see it.
In his discussion with the government, what were the main issues that both sides had discussed and agreed to?
Right. Well, this was his first meeting, so a lot of this was just getting to know the new government personnel. One of the things that was picked up in the newspaper was he announced the first of a number of larger scale projects that Canada is going to be delivering here. I think the figure of 44 million was the figure used, but really that's the start of what we hope is going to be a stream of development cooperation projects. I can talk about a couple of those briefly. One of them is, I'll give you two examples that are kind of contrasting and show you the two different areas that we're looking at. One of them is a program to support the Forum of Federations and Beda Institute here in Myanmar in doing training and research on federalism. Because as we all know, and I think all parties agree to, a democratic federal system is the goal of the people of Myanmar and the NLD. So what the Forum of Federations is, they're an organization that collects experts and best practices in federated systems and shares them and discusses them with countries that are seeking to establish or change their own federal system. So that's going to be a multi-year program of training. Canada's already been doing it in a smaller scale for a couple of years. There are many NLD members of Parliament who have been through this training. And so we had a meeting with, one of the meetings we had there was also with members of Parliament who have been through Forum of Federations training. And it was successful, and we want to scale it up. So it'll be a multi-million-dollar program of training at the union level, but we hope also state and local level. So that's one type of project we announced. Another was a program of training for women entrepreneurs in the rural sector. So the idea is our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is very interested in gender equality, and so we kind of put that idea together with the notion here that 70% of the population lives in rural areas. And empowering women to become entrepreneurs is really a way to create wealth in the countryside, and it would also possibly prevent too rapid migration to cities and inequality in different parts of Myanmar. So those are two examples of programs that we announced. But there are others, and there are going to be many more. To get back to what we talked about in those meetings, though, one of the central concerns of our government and our Minister of Foreign Affairs that's linked to federalism is the idea of embracing diversity. And I think this resonates with the Myanmar experience, where national reconciliation is such a key issue. And people here think of Canada as a country. It's a peaceful country. It's an affluent country, but we've had to work through a lot of problems. We're a multilingual country, or at least 2 official languages, and there's been terrible tension between those ethnic groups at times in our past. And I think through dialogue and institutional arrangements, we've overcome that. It's an ongoing process, it's never ending. But also it's a very multicultural country, and it's a country with Aboriginal populations who have their own unique challenges. So the notion of Canada as a country that's actually quite similar to Myanmar in a lot of ways, multilingual, multi-religious, multi-ethnic, multicultural. And our minister was very interested in, not bringing a recipe for success, but saying we should have a dialogue about these issues, because I think we have a lot to learn, and we hope that we have some experiences, good and bad, to share with Myanmar. So that was a very key issue. And then, of course, issues like economic development, environment was a very key issue that was discussed in the meeting with the president. Usually you want to brief your minister very well about everything that's going to happen, but that was sort of a surprise that the president spoke very passionately about the environment and climate change. And our Prime Minister, again, Justin Trudeau, that's one of his central concerns is climate change. So we're starting to think now about how maybe can Canada cooperate with Myanmar to mitigate effects of climate change, adapt to climate change, because it's going to be a very serious issue here.
When we look at the broader bilateral relationship, what would you see are the main priorities, focused areas between the two countries? Especially, Myanmar is going to have a new government, and you also have a new government led by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
So what would you say would be the main priorities, focused areas?
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the fact that there's a new government here, because or there's a new government in Canada, because there is a lot of similarities there too. We're going through a transition, new cabinet, new leadership, new policies. We're very familiar. We're very familiar as civil servants with what's going on here in Myanmar. What are the priorities? Well, maybe if I can kind of go back, allow me to go back 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah.
So, or even further. I mean, you may know that, of course, Canada and Myanmar had a very icy relationship for about 2 decades or more. Yeah. And after the announcement was made to open the embassy, and we had our first staff on the ground here permanently in 2013. I arrived in 2013 as well. And the embassy opened, physically the embassy opened in 2014. So we're a very new embassy, and our footprint is fairly small. We're fewer than a dozen staff. So we've had to be very targeted about what kind of things we wanted to get involved in. We can't do everything. So especially in the first year or two, we were very focused on supporting grassroots organizations here, especially ones that were dealing with freedom of civil liberties and human rights. And we thought also that was a very efficient use of funds, because a little bit of money given directly to a local organization is the most efficient way, rather than bringing people from Canada or some other type of top-heavy project. So I would say until now, the priority has really been human rights and governance, helping Myanmar in its path to reform. The economic relationship has actually grown very fast, but from a very, very small base. So that's something I'd really like to see over the next couple of years developing, and maybe we can talk about that later on in our discussion. And then another pillar is development cooperation, as I said, and that's something that we've only been able to kind of gear up to now because it takes a lot more staff, and now we've grown the embassy to where we're not it's not like a corner store mom and pop operation anymore. We have a fully functioning embassy that now has trade, political, development sections, and so we're able to have a broader relationship with Myanmar.
Yeah. In terms of trade, I understand there was almost none, before 2010, and so can you tell us about the progress,
yes,
or the trade, the figures between the two countries,
it's
comparing with 2010 and like now?
Right. If you look at the percentage increase from 2010 till now in 5 years, you could think that we've done a fantastic job. The growth is something like, I don't know, 5,000% or something. But the reason we have to admit is that it started from such an incredibly low base. The bilateral trade now is about $50 million a year, which is quite small, better than zero, but we think there's a tremendous opportunity for growth. There's also a tremendous opportunity for investment here, because a lot of the expertise that Canada has fits very well with Myanmar's needs, and a lot of people know of Canada as a resource-rich country, and it is a very resource-rich country, but we've also managed to make use of those resources, to harvest those resources in a way that's brought maximum benefit to the country and limited negative side effects. So to develop resources in a way that benefits local communities and also mitigates things like negative environmental impacts or negative social impacts. So we see a lot of potential in this country for investment, trade in natural resources. The problem, so you may ask, so where are all the Canadian natural resource companies? So it's interesting because half of the mining companies in the world are listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Canada's really the global leader in small scale exploratory mining. But those companies have not come here in the numbers that you might expect. And the reason for that is it's not that there aren't a lot of riches waiting to be discovered here, because there are. It's more about the regulatory environment, the legislation about mining, the legislation about investment, and also the broader issue of rule of law. Because if it's very obvious that if a company thinks that their assets can be taken away or they can be sued and they won't be able to win a fair fight in court, there's many places in the world you can invest. There's a lot of places in the world to dig. So that's what really has to change here. One thing has been mitigated over the last 5 years is the political risk. So there's less worry about political risk now than ever, I think. But the issue of the regulatory environment and the legal structure remains. And if I could just pick another case would be the financial services. So, for example, a company like, I don't want to do an advertisement, a product placement, but a company like Manulife Insurance is a Canadian company that has a representative office in Yangon. But they're not selling any insurance right now because the sector is not open. If sectors like finance could be opened up, I think you'd see a lot of foreign investment coming in, and the worry is that Myanmar companies will be hurt by it. But I think it would raise the game of Myanmar companies, and competition, we all know through long and hard experience, is the way to increase productivity and to increase standards of living. So I think that's going to be a real challenge for this government over the next 5 years. And all of those things, opening, the legislation and opening sectors, that's difficult work and takes time. You can't just say, okay, now we want a free and open economy.